raise the debate to a whole new level now by looking at a critical incident that reveals Democratic complicity and reveals, in effect, the close ties between the Democrats and the Nazis. Yet, to my knowledge, this is not taught in any textbook. And as a result, most students and most young people, most people generally, know nothing about it. I actually showed a scene in my movie Death of a Nation, which if you hadn't read my work, knew nothing about it, this scene would be a little bit of a bafflement to you. So I want you to watch. If you're listening in audio, some of the voices are in German, but I'll explain in a moment.
Haben einen Präzedenzfall. Das ist unser Plan. Subjekte ohne Bürgerrechte.
Amerika? Die. Wie identifizieren die Amerikaner einen Neger?
Die Ein-Tropfen-Regel. Jede erkennbare Spur schwarzer Abstammung heißt, dass man als Schwarzer gilt.
Menschliche Härte. Auch wenn jemand weiß aussieht und sich wie ein Weißer benimmt, kann er immer noch als Schwarzer gesehen werden.
Die Ein-Tropfen-Regel ist wohl zu streng.
So this is an amazing, a mind-blowing scene. Let me set the context. The date is June 5th, 1934. You have the senior members of the Nazi Party who have been charged with drafting the Nuremberg laws, and they're meeting in a room, and they're trying to figure out, they want to create the world's first racist state, and they're super excited about it. One of their members, a guy named Heinrich Krieger, points out to them, hey guys, I know you're having trouble thinking of a precedent for the world's first racist state, but I have one for you. It's the Democratic Party in the United States. And the Nazis are like, what? The Democrats? And then Krieger basically goes on to explain. He asks this question. He goes, what is it that we Nazis are trying to do here? We're trying to do three things. He goes, number one, we're trying to confiscate the property of the Jews. Number two, we're trying to separate the Jews from the rest of us. We want to outlaw intermarriage between Jews and other Germans. And number three, we want to segregate the Jews. We want to confine them to ghettos. We don't want them to be part of a general population. And Krieger goes, I studied it in Arkansas, and in America, the Democratic Party has done all this. Number one, the left and the Democratic Party has pushed through anti-immigration laws that use race as the basis of citizenship. So in other words, it gives us a precedent to call the Jews not really citizens of Germany, even though they live here. Number two, the Democratic Party has all kinds of ways in which they're able to confiscate the property of blacks in America. Well, we can use that precedent here in Nazi Germany. Number three, they have segregation. The Democratic Party has segregation throughout the South, segregation laws. We can use those laws as a model for the Nuremberg laws. And the Nazis become super excited. They can't believe it. They actually have Krieger round up the Democratic Party laws, and they are passing them around. And they're discussing the democratic laws. And and this is perhaps the most crushing part of it, at one point they talk about this issue of who is a Jew? Who is a Jew? And so then they ask Krieger, they go, how do they do it in America? How do the Democrats decide? Who counts as black? And Krieger goes, well, in America, the Democrats have the one-drop rule. In other words, one drop of blood, a single drop of blood, makes you black, even if you're 99% white. And the Nazis look at each other and they're horrified. They go, oh, no, that's too extreme for us. We can't go that far. The amazing thing is the Nazis found the racism of the Democratic Party in America a bit much for them. And so they adopted, by the way, a different rule, which is, I'd call it the 75% rule, which is that you're a Jew if you have 3 Jewish grandparents. Now, where do I get all this stuff from? Well, I get it from a remarkable book put out by the Yale legal scholar, James Whitman. Here's the book, Hitler's American Model. Here's a telling line. He talks about, it is an unpleasant truth that throughout this effort to degrade, demonize, and expel the Jews of Germany, American law remained a regular Nazi point of reference, just as it had been for Hitler. America remained the leader, and Nazis repeatedly turned to the American example while developing their own immigration and citizenship law. Now, I want to point out here, well, first of all, I want to commend Whitman for his scholarship, but I also want to point out his camouflage. He is on the left. He doesn't want to put the blame on the Democrats. He knows that every segregation law in the South, without exception, was passed by a Democratic legislature, signed by a Democratic governor, enforced by Democratic officials. But what Whitman very cleverly does is he puts the blame on America. It's American law. Instead of saying Hitler's Democratic model, it's Hitler's American model. He's doing kind of what Nikole Hannah-Jones is doing, which is he's sort of using the left-wing anti-Americanism and using the Nazi ties with the Democratic Party, but blaming America. But here's my point, and here's the kind of lesson I draw from all this. Where is all this taught on the American campus? In other words, if it is the case that one of the most notorious racist pieces of law, the notorious Nuremberg laws, which were called a dress rehearsal for the Holocaust, if those were lifted directly from American segregation laws, democratic segregation laws, and progressive immigration laws, progressive laws that limited immigration, if this was the case, shouldn't Americans know about this? They don't. It's not taught. I can assure you that if I go on a college campus and start talking to students, they'll look at me like I'm insane. And that means it's not taught, and it's not, as far as I know, in any textbook. So Kevin Cruz began by challenging me to find a single textbook that showed Democratic complicity in racism and slavery, and I have supplied at least 2. But now I have a challenge for him. And you can see how I've widened my circle, because I'm not talking about one textbook. I'm not saying, here's a textbook, it doesn't talk about this. As far as I know, no textbook talks in any comprehensive detail about it. It's not because there's a lack of historical record. The record is all there. It's deliberately being concealed. Why? Because the left-wing historians that dominate academia don't want young people to know that there was a symbiotic relationship between the Democratic Party on the one hand and fascism and early Nazism on the other. Both sides borrowed from each other. They were ultimately, you may say, ideological bedfellows.